when I was in my undergrad in computer science, uh, I was talking to a PhD, and I was talking with him for a while, and I was talking about, like, what theoretical work that he was working on, what was his thesis around, and it was on a very specific point in machine learning. Um, that was way over my head. I have no clue what the hell he was talking about. Right now, it's like, oh my God, this is so incredible. I really looked up to him because he's gone so deep in computer science to the point where this theoretical stuff that we can't even do today, we have to wait 40 years for the hardware to catch up. He's living there, and that's so incredible. And he pushed back, and he actually said, no, it's not. And he kind of regrets going down this path. And the reason was that is he showed me a spider chart, right? And for I'll try to audibly describe a spider chart if anyone doesn't know what that is. There's a center point and there's lines going out in different directions. And think of each line as a measurement, right? And let's put like a human, maybe someone's career or their skills on each line, and they say really good at creativity. Let's say then there's some more specific ones. Really good at computer science. Really good at I don't know, music. Really good at marketing, really good at finance, legal, blah, 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 all these different things, right? And then let's give everyone a score. And he showed me what his score was, is like not great at any of these things, but computer science was 10 out of 10, right? And you can kind of see a little spike out that way, and everything was really small. And he said what he found the best, maybe founders or people who led things in society, even when we look at like presidents or CEOs, whatever, they just had a really big chart. Maybe they weren't really good at anything, but they were like a 4 out of 10 at everything. And the reason I talk about this is because when you're a 4 out of 10 at everything, or 5 out of 10, you're not an expert, but you're not a novice. You're kind of in the middle. You can start to connect the dots between them. And I think those are the best PMs that can connect the dots between, seeing a potential legal challenge and then being able to bring in their kind of way of thinking around marketing to maybe fix that legal challenge before it happens and kind of message something to a different way. Or they see a computer science issue, they see a technical problem, and because they know a bit about design, they can say, hey, why don't we design it this way? Because I know in 2 to 3 years we're going to run into this problem. So I think having a little bit of everything, we see this in LLMs too, right? Like an LLM is just specifically designed on one thing. It's not the best LLM. The best LLMs are the mixture of experts, right? And there are multiple, we say experts, but they don't, I'm trying to make it a little bit more generic, but it's a mixture of a bunch of different skills make the best LLMs. And I think that's the same for PMs, right? When you're just kind of good at a lot of things, you can connect the dots in ways that no one else can.
Hi, I'm Keshav. The following is a conversation with Liam Bolling. He's a product manager at Google, currently working on the Gemini API. Prior to this, he's led engineering teams at Google and Microsoft and has founded 3 startups. Our conversation was centered around the character traits that make someone a better PM, how to make decisions when the information required to make them doesn't exist, and some interesting thoughts around LLMs. I hope you like it. My particular goal for this episode is that I want to figure out what are some character traits that make a person good for product management, and at the same time, I think PM and starting a startup or starting a company have a lot of similarities in that both of these things are very unconstrained, very unbounded. There are no structured paths to figure out both of these types of work. So that's what I want to discuss. And before that, I think I can start from your story. So I want to go deeper into what were you as a child and what are some interests that you had? Because I think these are the things that we don't really speak about. And I think your childhood determines a lot about what you'll be doing later in life. So would love to know, how are you like as a person?
Yeah, let's start with the childhood one, and then I can go into
Yeah.
more the broad kind of generalization about what I think great product managers do. The ones that I look up to, at least I think I'm okay. But so as a child, let's see, childhood. I really loved building things with Legos. Right, Legos were like my number one way of taking something from my imagination and from my brain and building it into the physical world, right? And thinking about how can I use these limited pieces to build this thing that I think exists, but I can't quite articulate it, right? And
Yeah.
and that's one starting point. And then another thing I love doing, which sounds really weird, is just going in the woods and like building forts and digging holes and kind of weird stuff like
Yeah.
that. Maybe some Boy Scout-esque type stuff. Um, and I think the combination of those two things, like one is kind of the first one with Legos. It reminds me so much of code and technology today, right? We have these building blocks
Yeah.
that are slightly confined, and you're like, you got the brick with the six pegs on it, and it usually just fits in certain pegs, and you can maybe twist it and turn it a little bit and make something really incredible and beautiful. And I was really creative and I loved building stuff with Legos. So that's where I think one of the coding side comes from. And then the being in the woods and building forts, like that's just kind of, I think, a grit slash weird creativity slash survival. I don't know, some words are in with
Yeah.
that characteristic, and I think that also is a bit where I got my like just brute force mentality of like, you know what, if I just sink enough time into this and work hard enough, something good is going to come out the other side, and we'll figure something out. So those were kind of two things growing up that I think definitely influenced what I do now. Even before that, my half my family is from Germany, the other half's from the United States. So I was born in Germany. When we first came to the United States, I give a lot of credit to my mother, who she does some very she wanted me to kind of be creative, and she would give me a lot of crayons and things to draw and ways to express creativity that way. But then also some very what's the right way to say it? Not like common ways of expressing creativity. She'd give me a bunch of, tape and, the toilet paper slash paper towel tubes, and just give it to me and some scissors and be like, go make something, right? And something like that. And that was when I was really, really young. That was another way of just me building stuff and tinkering with the physical world and trying to build stuff using my imagination. So I think all of that accumulates to putting some work into something, being creative, trying to bend the things that are physically possible into something that you just imagine, and having that come out, and then you can touch it and you can feel it. I think that's the first step of unlocking someone's creativity, and I really gotta put a lot of thanks and appreciation to my parents for setting that up for me. Yeah.
Yeah, love this answer. I think, especially when with the current advancements in AI, the definition of creativity is being molded into like it's. I think it's time to redefine creativity, and because of what the because of how human AI collaboration is going to look like in the future. And
Yeah.
would love to know what do you how would you define creativity? What's it like for you?
Ooh, defining creativity, that's tough. I I think when I think of what creativity is I always have it in the lens of solving a problem or
Yeah,
seeing a problem. I think it takes a bit of creativity to see that people might have a problem with this and they don't really know about it yet. And I
true,
think
true.
maybe
Yeah,
maybe creativity is not thinking linearly, but thinking in a way that doesn't really make sense and has a bit of randomness to it. But someone who's creative has that extreme randomness in their thinking, but is able to focus it in on one area that they've found, right? And I think of it kind of as like a bunch of moving strings, and it seems like a mess, but then they can focus in that lens on something, and they solve it in a way that no one thought of before, or or looked at a problem in a way that no one saw before. And that's how I kind of define it at the abstract level. In the execution side of it, it's going about life and seeing, like, why is this coffee cup this way? Maybe this could be built better. Or like, wow, they really didn't think about, like, when I'm tip it over at fault, whatever it is, right? Thinking of like kind of what people just take for granted. I think that is a side of creativity. But then there's the other side of creativity and thinking, okay, well, we have these constraints, and I want to build I want to build a better product here, or I want to paint something that I think is in my head and I don't quite know what it is, and I want to put it out there and use the materials that I have. So I think it's a mode of expression, but it's also I kind of relate it back to it's a mode of I've just seen things differently, and there can be small instances of it of just walking in a different path than everyone else, or they can be large instances of creating a Facebook or Apple, a large company. Um, but everything I think like that is creative, just trying to think differently.
Going deeper in that, do you think that high agency and creativity are related? So it's like people who are creative are more agentic in general, as opposed to, and also I think people who are agentic are more creative. So works both ways. What's your opinion on this? Because I'm very interested in agency as of now, because, and I think you as a person are you are someone who is very high agency, who has a very high agency, because you've found two companies also working as a product manager, which is a space in and of itself which is very highly entropic, and it takes a lot of, you should not complain about things. You should be able to adjust to your circumstances, because they are so dynamic in product work. So would love to know what's your opinion on this.
Tell me more about the definition of agency here.
True.
Yeah.
How I would define it is that agency is, I think, the ability to take action even if the circumstances are not in your favor, and not complaining about those circumstances. So I think I can give a good example. So let's say someone is a lawyer, and they are getting very interested to build a fashion brand,
Hmm.
but they don't have past experiences in building a fashion brand. It's just that, let's say, they saw a podcast of a guy who had built a fashion brand on YouTube, and then they are now very interested in that space. So firstly, identifying that everything can be learned, uh, that would be, I think, the first step in uh, getting to a more agentic environment. Then actually taking action based on that, and not complaining that because I was a lawyer, I am not able to transition to a new field,
Hmm.
uh, even if I am, let's say, interested in, and even if I think that I should do this for the next 10 years of my life, or for the next time of my life. That's how I would describe agency.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the first part of that is a mindset that I've tried to have. And well, I'll rewind the clock a little bit. I really loved the OG Apple, right? And I
Yeah,
loved the the products that Apple brought out when Steve was running the company,
same.
right? Back in that 2000, early 2000s to when Steve passed in around 2010. I'm not going to count Siri, and kind of 2010 is a weird year. That
Yeah,
year before, that decade before, there were a couple quotes that he had that really stuck with me, and the one that really stuck with me was something around that life is like a sandbox, and you have total control in what you can do. I don't know the exact quote, but he described it during some conference, and that really stuck with me. Of like, you can do what you want. You have no one can tell you no. If you want to go do this tomorrow or think in this way the next day, you want to walk a different way to work, whatever it is, you have total autonomy to go build that and go try it out and to be curious about that space. And the only thing holding you back is yourself. But life gets a little heavy later on, right? Like that's a challenge that I think a lot of us has is when you have kids, when you have a significant other, if you choose to go down those paths, if you choose to even buy a home or buy a car or something, right? Like maybe you get a little bit more money and then you want to buy a few more things, and all of that starts to weigh you down to where you're just your example before, if you're a lawyer and you want to become something else, you have all these other things that you have to think about because you're responsible for all of them. You can't just pack your bags and move to another place because you got to think, how do I move all my stuff? So
yeah,
I one of my thoughts around there is try to be lean with assets.
yeah.
Try to not be lean with relationships, but be understanding and try to instill in relationships like there's new opportunity for us here, right? And there's new opportunities and new ways to do something. So I think having that mindset in the first part that you described of just thinking you can do anything you want. There's so much information out there. You can use Google, GPT, Gemini. You can figure out how to be the, maybe not the best in a field, but pretty damn good in a field pretty quickly with all the information out there. And it's just up to you to think about what you want to do. I think when you look at it from a high level, there are two attributes, and these might go to the previous question that you asked about what makes a good PM. I think at that very high level, the two things that make a good PM are creativity and grit.
Yeah.
And creativity, we talked about it a bit, looking at problems differently, looking at the world differently, looking at, why does something do this? Why is this door designed this way? And then grit as not, just removing the bounds of what you should be doing and thinking about just what do I want to do? I'm going to put all my effort into this. I'm going to build it. I'm going to do it, and not having something slow you down or stop you. And finding a way, right? If you're launching a business, for example, and you put your app or your website out there and no one's showing up, not saying like, oh, well, I guess I'm a failure now. I guess that's it. We're
Yeah.
done. But looking at, okay, let me try and, guerrilla market this thing. Let me go on Reddit and post a bunch of subreddits, or let me walk down the street with flyers and get people to use this thing. Whatever it is, you figure it out. And that's what I think makes a good PM, but I think also goes back to, your question about agency and creativity and all that.
Creativity and grit are the two themes that you mentioned that could be uh, helpful for like things that make someone a great PM. And I wanted to go a little deeper into these qualities and traits that make people better at product thinking. And one of the things that I'm thinking is that first question is that how can someone identify uh, a very strong differentiation as compared to other PMs or other people and get better at thinking differently, having a
Hmm.
contrarian point of view, and also having some amount of conviction in that and trying knowledge around that so that they can back it up with data.
Yeah. So is your question a bit around like how could a PM or anyone for that matter like
Yeah,
get more creative?
yeah,
Is that
get more creative and find a differentiation.
yeah? I'll tell this maybe through a story. When I was
Yeah,
in my undergrad in computer science, uh, I was talking to a PhD, and I was talking with him for a while, and I was talking about like what theoretical work that he was working on, what was his thesis around, and it was on a very specific point in machine learning. Um, that was way over my head. I have no clue what the hell he was talking about. Right now, I was like, "Oh my God, this is so incredible." I really looked up to him because he's gone so deep in computer science to the point where this theoretical stuff that we can't even do today, we have to wait 40 years for the hardware to catch up. He's living there, and that's so incredible. And he pushed back, and he actually said, "No, it's not." And he kind of regrets going down this path. And the reason was that is he showed me a spider chart, right? And for I'll try to audibly describe a spider chart if anyone doesn't know what that is. There's a center point and there's lines going out in different directions. And think of each line as a measurement, right? And let's put like a human, maybe someone's career or their skills on each line, and they say really good at creativity. Let's say then there's some more specific ones. Really good at computer science. Really good at I don't know, music. Really good at marketing. Really good at finance, legal, blah blah blah. All these different things, right? And then let's
yeah,
give everyone a score. And he showed me what his score was is like not great at any of these things, but computer science was 10 out of 10, right? And you can kind of see a little spike out that way and everything was really small.
yeah,
And he said what he found the best maybe founders or people who led things in society, when we look at like presidents or CEOs, whatever, they just had a really big chart. Maybe they weren't really good at anything, but they were like a 4 out of 10 at everything. And And the reason I talk about this is because when you're a 4 out of 10 at everything or 5 out of 10, you're not an expert, but you're not a novice. You're kind of in the middle. You can start to connect the dots between them. And I think those are the best PMs that can connect the dots between, seeing a potential legal challenge and then being able to bring in their kind of way of thinking around marketing to maybe fix that legal challenge before it happens and kind of message something to a different way. Or they see a computer science issue, they see a technical problem, and because they know a bit about design, they can say, hey, why don't we design it this way? Because I know in 2 to 3 years we're going to run into this problem. So I think having a little bit of everything. We see this in LLMs too, right? Like an LLM is just specifically designed on one thing. It's not the best LLM. The best LLMs are the mixture of experts, right? And there are multiple. We say experts, but they don't. I'm trying to make it a little more generic, but it's a mixture of a bunch of different skills make the best LLMs, and I think that's the same for PMs, right? When you're just kind of good at a lot of things, you can connect the dots in ways that no one else can. And that's what I would suggest to really set a PM above the bar. And the ones that I look up to, they seem to have those skills.
There's an LLM called Mistral MOE. The MOE full form is Mixture of Experts. So that was a very brilliant articulation in that sense. I have found that if you are able to empathize with your users, and let's say you're building for a core group of users, your job, the the difficulty of your job reduces drastically because you're able to think from your user's perspective of
Yes.
and you don't have to spend that energy on trying to relate to those problems. So I think adding on to what you said, uh, the best PMs I think are also able to empathize with their users very well, so they don't spend their energy on those this particular domain. And also something that I have noticed is that as your professor said is very interesting to me, and something I've been curious about for a while, is that the world's most powerful people are in fields which are very hard to measure. uh,
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
and because like you can't really measure if someone is a good PM or not. There are no metrics to track that. Hey, creativity, as you mentioned on the spider's web, creativity 4 on 10, but how do you track that?
Yeah.
So yeah, and like that's a very interesting observation that I found. So, and also I'll be curious about this, that there are sometimes when you have to take a decision when the information required to take the decision is not available. Let's say you're
Mm.
working on something very cutting edge,
Yeah.
and there is no information. So what do you do then? Either you rely on your past intuition, or like would have to know how do you operate in those circumstances?
Yeah. There are a lot of situations, especially now working in the generative AI space, where
Yeah,
I'm often trying to think or predict of what will happen in 2 years, right?
yeah,
And if we rewind the clock 100 years, 2 years, nothing really happens in 2 years, right? Things
yeah,
move in decades, right? But nowadays it seems that decades happen in months, right? And
yeah.
and things completely shift societally in very small, objectively small windows of time when we compare it to evolution. It's like, oh, humans, we probably got hands and it probably took a couple 100 million years, right? But now we're like, oh, we create an entirely new LLM that can see, and it's been 2 months. It's like, wow, okay, things are changing quick. um, so this I'll relate this also back to some advice that I found when talking to a couple executives at Google. And I chatted with a few folks here, and I wanted to see, what makes a good executive, and specifically a PM executive, which a lot of PMs actually
Yeah.
kind of often become the chief product officer, but often become the CEO. And it's like, well, what's going on here? Why? Like Sundar, for example, was a PM. Sundar is
Yeah.
the CEO of Google, and Satya, who I met him a few times and asked him a couple of questions. He also was a PM. And I'm like, what's going on here? Why are all these PMs?
Yeah.
What water are they drinking that they become the CEOs of these companies? And and to your question around what do you do when you don't have the information out there? I think that's what sets them apart, these executives, is that they're put in situations, and I think some PMs are also put in a situation where you have to make decisions that are so difficult, and you have to make them quick. And that is
Yeah,
extremely stressful and not a human trait, right? Humans usually sit back and we think about something. We ask people and we try to figure it out. But when you're leading an organization or thinking about a product in the future or where the company is going to go, you don't have time. And what you have to rely on is your instincts. And you have to rely on your past experiences to quickly bubble that up to make a decision instantly, given the knowledge that you have. So going back to what I talked about before of having as much experiences in different parts of the spider chart, I think what that starts to build is that cross kind of collaboration between all of your skills that you can instantly spit out a decision that makes a lot of sense and is hopefully the right
true.
one. So that's similar to how we build AI products today and just accumulation of knowledge. Hopefully we're just crossing our fingers that with all that previous knowledge, it'll probably come out with a good decision about something that it doesn't quite know. And when I look at executives at Google, what they do is they're really firing from the hip because you're working with what you got. And that's what I would say is what you do sometimes is you draw on your instincts, you draw on all your previous knowledge, and hopefully because you have that broad knowledge, you'll instantly come out with the right decision. Being an executive, being a PM, it's not a natural thing for us to do,
Yeah,
but I think that's the best way to do it, which is
definitely.
really tough to admit because we don't want to think that like, oh, Sundar's, or even, presidents of, or, leaders of countries are just firing from the hip, but they have to rely on the people around them to bring the right data to them. Hopefully it's the right data, and then they make that ultimate decision based on all the accumulation of their life's knowledge together. Hopefully it's the right
True.
one.
Yeah, and I think even with AI, we are facing similar problems that it's so hard for us to, uh, for an AI to answer questions that it wasn't particularly trained on. And yeah, that's the thing that fascinates me a lot. Even if it has so much data which a human can't even comprehend,
Yeah.
still it's so hard to ask questions that it wasn't particularly trained on. So I think, yeah, that definitely is a skill that differentiates exec level positions from PM and people who do become CEOs.
I I
Okay.
do think when we push, it's similar to humans, right? We really designed this into a trap here. When you look at neural
Yeah,
nets and we're like, oh, we really designed this like the human brain, because when we talk to these AIs and interact with these LLMs, they're kind of funny. They're intrinsically a little lazy, just like
yeah,
humans. But when you push them really hard and you say like, no, you need to decide. What
yeah,
are you going to do? Think again. I need a decision.
yeah.
They do kind of start to, just like us, make some good decisions going into the future. And yeah, I think it's just so funny that we've really just built humans and computers with the flaws as
Yeah.
well. So
It's fascinating that we are training LLMs and making these AI models similar to how a human operates, and then we are expecting uh, much more from them, as opposed to what we do. I think the next step in this field, I think, is agents. So LLMs based on next word prediction. Now agents will
absolutely.
be next action prediction. So yeah, that would be very interesting if we go down that path. So how do you think product work changing when we are going in domains where we are trying to configure LLMs to take actions rather than, because even like taking an action requires so much information and there are so many touch points that could go wrong, so many edge cases. So what do you think, like in general, like the future of product is going to be?
The future of product, it's I'd look at maybe a more broad question as well of what's the future of people having jobs.
Yeah,
and
anything.
and exactly. How
Yeah,
how do we feel? Because having a job in a weird sense is kind of human, right? We like
yeah,
to do something that makes us feel like we're improving something, and hopefully somewhat feel rewarded for that work, right? There's a lot of challenges around, we need to make sure people get paid the right amount that makes them feel rewarded, that they can afford to have a good life. And those are other issues that we won't get into today. But I think humans
yeah,
like doing stuff that has a goal. Um, but maybe, yeah, specifically for PMs, I think in the next few years, my advice for PMs and where I think it's going to head is get really good at using these AI tools that are coming out. And I don't mean on the like fringes of, you don't have to go deep in the Discord channels and find some weird models that people are producing for obscure use cases, but be be like useful around like understanding what they are good at and what they're not good at. And I'll give one example is a few weeks ago, I was talking with a friend who's working at a consulting company, and they had to go through, I think it was an Excel sheet that had 10,000 rows in it or something. And they were trying to find some company that could help them figure out how to classify each one of these between five different categories. And I was like, blaring red lights, this is what an LLM's good at.
yeah,
Just, I was like, here's the Google Sheet plugin, put in your GPT, your OpenAI API, and you just write a prompt and drag it down and it'll fill it out, right? So that's the exact use case, right? We're like, wow, an LLM is really good at this. And it makes you look like a superhuman at work because it's like, how did you manage to classify 10,000 of these things in zero time with $3 of spend? Like, that's unheard of. So
yeah,
finding these use cases where LLMs are good at, that I think in the next few years will be like from now into the next few years, extremely useful in product. Start doing that today. Longer term, this is where I don't quite know what the answer is either. I don't even know. I was talking to my little cousins. A couple of them are choosing what major they're going to go in for undergraduate. And I'm like, I don't know what you should do, honestly. The world is changing every month. I have no clue.
yeah,
So the only advice I can give is PMs, get close to AI and LLM tools and hug those things as close as possible because we're all in the middle of the ocean and the only floating devices that we have are these AI tools. And I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully someone saves us, but hug the
yeah.
tools. Just grab those.
And I think most of product work is trying to fight against randomness and trying to decrease entropy whenever it's possible.
Yeah.
And I think even in the larger, I think in life in general, anything you do seems to be trying to make sense of chaos, trying to convert it into order, some sort of energy transfer. That's what I think. And I would love to know how do you deal with data, and how do you, when given so much data, how do you uh, separate the noise from signal?
Oh, that's that will be the challenge of my life and I think your life and many other people's lives of
Yeah,
there's a lot of noise out there and there's even more and more noise every day,
yeah,
right? The more that we connect the world, the more we can't determine if it's a bot or a human. There's just so much noise and what do we believe and what do we trust? I I struggle with this. I don't know the answer to that. I try to think around who are the people that I trust in my life, and I kind of think of it as like for personal decisions, or if I'm on the right path, I have really close friends. I kind of consider them my little, board of directors, and they help determine when I have a tough like life decision or something, what I should do. I think that's having really close friends and family helps a lot. Having people that you love and trust helps a lot. And that's maybe just general advice, maybe not the specific day-to-day
yeah,
PM
yeah.
advice. And when looking at PM advice specifically and and building a company or leading your product, I think we're going to have to rely a bit more on our product sense and having that conviction that you're
Yeah.
doing the right thing and you're going to build something that's going to help people. Going back to your comment around empathy, I think that's so important. If you have that empathy and holistically have that empathy, thinking around like what could be the negative implications of the thing that I'm building, what could be the positive implications, kind of having that inner monologue and inner voice saying this is the direction you need to go in, and maybe with a few people that you trust to kind of gut check you, I think that's probably the route that one should take. Because the more that there are the more noise out there, the more it can push you off the path that you ultimately should be going on. And so trying to maybe filter that out and ignore it might be the best thing. But having a couple people that if they come to you, all come to you and say like, hey, this is really stupid, you shouldn't be doing this. And you have the ability to say, okay, my board of directors is calling on me to say, stop doing this, and you listen to them. But if you see a random comment on Reddit or Twitter, or you get some nasty email from a coworker or whatever it is, I think it's a skill to ignore that. It hurts. It hurts to read it, and you want to take it in, but it's the best thing to just keep going on the path that you believe in because it's probably the right one.
Yeah, because I think it's with AI generated text coming over, and it'll be very hard for people to find sources of information that they trust. Even with me,
Yeah.
when I'm searching for a particular thing that I don't know much about, so like something that's uh, new to me,
Hmm.
uh, especially in the current 3 4 months, and like when GPT got famous, since
Hmm.
that time around, I found it very hard to trust a particular piece of information,
Yeah.
uh, because I have no idea what if it's right or wrong. So, and if that occupies my mind space for a while, I might be having a very different point of view from what's the truth. Uh, and
Yeah.
especially with respect to uh, taking decisions when there is no information available, there can be very fake information around these particular cutting edge fields. So yeah, I think I don't have a clear answer to that, but I think your point was very valuable. It's a very big problem that I think almost everyone is going to face.
Yeah. No, I think like taking a step back when you see a piece of information or an opinion, I think looking at through the lens of okay, like what could be the motivations why someone would say that?
Yeah.
And I don't mean to start thinking of conspiracy theories, like I don't want to get too deep into that. But
Yeah.
at a light level, think, okay, why would someone say that? Are they scared? Are they hurt? Are they trying to make me feel a certain way? Do they need a reaction out of me? And kind of I think taking a step back and thinking, if I was on, make myself a 6-year old version of myself, and they're also on the playground, and we're both 6-year olds, what's going on? Are they bullying me? Like, are they scared? Like what's going on there? And I think if you kind of minimize it down to like, okay, it's just two basic humans, like what's happening,
Yeah.
that might help a little bit. And then also trying to find a counterpoint. I've found
Got
that
it.
even in like the news, sometimes you read a headline and you're like, oh yeah, yeah, that confirms my bias. That completely confirms what I thought about this too. Wherever someone leans politically, they seem to always read the same side, right? And what I found is, you know what? If in the United States, there's kind of two extremes. There's like Fox News, which is a little bit more on the right, and then one could consider something like MSNBC a little bit more on the left. Those are two major news organizations. Well, if you read one of them, go read the other one and just kind of see like, well, what's the other side saying? maybe both of them are just completely false, but at least you're seeing both. And I think that helps. When it comes to AI articles and what's going on, there's a lot of money in the space. So everyone wants
Yeah.
to seem right. But what I've found to be the best thing is scientists and the researchers, they don't care as much. So I try to stay away from the brands and look more at the white papers that are coming out. Because those people, they just want to work, right? They're not trying to build $1 billion company. They're trying to publish their work, their life's work. Go read their stuff. And it's incredible. Sometimes it's really dense. Sometimes those white papers, I put it into ChatGPT because I'm like, I need to summarize this. I have no clue what this guy's talking about. But I found that that is like the most helpful thing to step away from the brands and just get into the actual hard science and the stuff that people are building. It's incredible stuff.
It's so fascinating that you say this because I started spending more time on Google Scholar and Archive
Yeah.
uh, to to deal with this. So yeah, we're I think reaching to similar solutions, and also yeah, also I think if anyone's looking to build something, trust could be a very good differentiator and being authentic,
Yeah.
because it'll be harder to find, uh, like it'll be very hard to find firms or brands that people can trust. So you could try to figure out a way that you could get people to trust you. You could, I think, make it very easy for you to build a good brand.
Yeah, that's why I think the creator economy in a weird way is really blowing
Yeah,
up. And your podcasts, when I look at YouTube, when I look at um, TikTok, people trust these other humans because in this noise, it's so hard in this weird way. Like it makes human voices so much more powerful and trusting people because you're like, I just don't know what I'm reading online. I don't know if it was written by a bot or someone who wants me to believe in their political opinion or throw money at their company. I don't know anymore, right? Like there's so many advertisements everywhere. But if you go to someone like you or you look at someone online, I love looking at I get my news from like Philip DeFranco, which is like an incredible YouTuber. He's been around for like 2 decades. And I trust him because, he's got no ulterior motive. He just kind of makes his money on ads on YouTube and he loves what he does. Like that's awesome. And that's what I know you're a person and I can hold you responsible too. Versus a whole company, like what am I going to go? Like yell at CNN?
yeah,
Like, no, you can't do that. And they don't give a
yeah.
shit. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I was reading an interesting statistic on this, that I was at the time when podcasts were taking off, and people were listening to 2 to 4 hour long podcasts. I was very confused. Why is someone spending 2 hours or 4 hours of their time trying to listen to two people talking? Does not make sense. Then I found out that the real reason was that uh, listening to those 4 hour conversations was a way for people to find a solution for their loneliness.
Mm,
uh,
interesting.
because they could, even if let's say in a digital world, they could actually see people sitting around on a table talking,
Yeah.
and that was a they felt that they had someone speaking to them directly. So and that's the reason why people listen to these 1 hour 2 hour long episodes. So
Makes sense.
yeah,
It's when you're walk on a walk or you're working on some
yeah,
stuff you don't really want to work on or even you're working on something you care about. Like having, I think it goes back to why I love where my best work is when I'm in a busy place, when I'm in a coffee shop, or when I'm in just an open office and there's a bunch of people running around and the chaos is around me. I feel like I get the best work
yeah,
there because I'm reminded that I'm surrounded by people and that's why I'm here, is because I want to make people happier. I want people to have a better life. And I think maybe that also goes back to why I love listening to podcasts, is because I'm like, oh yeah, there's other humans in the world. I'm not alone.
yeah.
And that's why I'm doing this thing at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. or something.
I really like talking to you. Thanks so much for taking out the time to be on the show, Liam.
Awesome. Yeah, no, great conversation and incredible questions. And yeah, people want to reach out to me. I'm also available to chat. You can just find me on LinkedIn or Google me, and you'll find some method of contacting me. I'm not shy with talking to folks. So, yeah.